How's it going, everybody? My name's Dave Whipple and you're watching Bush Radical. And welcome to episode 1 in my new series, Radical Bushcraft. But don't let the name fool you. There's nothing I'm going to talk about that's radical at all. As a matter of fact, this might be the simplest version of what we would call bushcraft that you're going to find on YouTube. Today in episode 1, I'd like to talk about something that's really kind of been brought to my attention recently. About 3 weeks ago, I put out a video entitled, "Is Bushcraft Dead?" And the thought behind that was, I get a lot of people who are frustrated with what's put out there as bushcraft, whether it's on TV or whether it's on YouTube. And I think there's a lot of stuff that's really blown out of proportion in importance. I think there's stuff that's kind of underemphasized that's probably more important. And I wanted to put a video out there to kind of address that. The idea of is bushcraft stale? And I got like 1,000 responses to that video. Lots of comments. Man, I read volumes of comments. Everybody wanted to write a paragraph. There was a reoccurring theme that I kept seeing over and over. People like, what is bushcraft? Isn't it just survival? Isn't it just camping? Isn't camping and survival the same thing? Isn't bushcraft really just survival skills? Isn't camping just really bushcraft? So there seemed to be this gigantic question mark about, what actually is bushcraft? Well, what's the point of putting a name to all these things we love to do in the outdoors? A lot of people saw camping and survival and bushcraft as all kind of the same thing. And I thought about that, and I really spent a lot of time trying to come up with a way to kind of flesh out the differences between those three different things, because I think they're incredibly different, but they can be kind of just lumped in the same category. And then it makes the conversation of what's important in bushcraft really difficult to talk about. So in this video, I want to do the best I can anyway to really differentiate those three topics: survival, bushcraft, and camping. Bear with me. I'm going to draw a picture and try to explain the differences in these three activities. And I'm sure there's somebody out there that can get the idea across better than I can, but I'm going to take a shot at it anyway. Let me show you what I got. In my opinion, bushcraft, as we know it, is a set of skills and knowledge that is appropriate in the wilderness. Bushcraft, in my mind, is a set of skills and knowledge that is basically wilderness skills. So on this end of the scale, down here, I'm going to say that this end of the scale is essential skills. That's fire, water, shelter. These are the quintessential bushcraft skills right down here. On this end over here, I would say there is the other end of bushcraft that veers way more towards crafts. You look in some of the older books by like Bernard Mason and whatnot. I mean, they show you how to make, toys out of birch bark, and how to make, a cupboard to hang up at a spike camp. And this is stuff, in my mind, that is getting towards the end of the spectrum to where it's fluff. I really don't need to know how to make toys out of natural material, in my opinion. This doesn't interest me. This might interest you, and if it does, more power to you. Down here is where I think is the really important stuff: fire, water, shelter. Fire, water, shelter, and the ways to get fire, and ways to get water, and the ways to get shelter, and the tools you might need for those three things. I think this is the real heart of the skill set that we would consider bushcraft. Now, what is camping? So if bushcraft is skills and knowledge that you would use in the wilderness, we can say that that's a noun. It's a thing. Bushcraft is a set of things. It's a set of other things. It's a noun. Camping, in my opinion, camping is a verb. And camping encompasses everything from the important end of bushcraft all the way to the frivolous end of bushcraft. We're going to say this is camping. This is deer camp, this is turkey camp, this is rustic camping. Way over here on this end, you might be KOA camping. If you're in an RV, you're RVing. It's a different thing. Any aspect of being outdoors and staying overnight and setting yourself up in the wilderness to just for any amount of time, let's call it camping. So on this end, we could say we have primitive camping and, kind of like bushcraft camps, where you go out to one or two different spots and you sit around the fire and you try to do the most you can with the least amount of stuff. And this is rustic camping. This could be, you know, backcountry travel is way more towards the primitive end, you know, whether it's a canoe trip, whether it's caribou hunting, whatnot. And then over here, you know, you can have tent camping in tent campgrounds on, you know, through hiking trails. And on this end, maybe you're just in a, maybe you're in a big tent, or maybe you're in a camper. Maybe, you know, maybe this is deer camp over here and you've got a propane stove and propane lights, and, you know, it's barely camping, but you're still using a few of these things. You're probably doing fire. You may be doing water, and you might not be doing shelter, but, you know, through most of this entire spectrum, fire, water, and shelter are all going to be part of camping. So we're going to say camping. Camping's a verb. Camping is you're doing something. Bushcraft is a noun. That's about as grammatical as I get. So what about survival? Is camping survival? No, it's not. Is bushcraft survival? No, it's not. What I would say survival is survival is a state of being. And it's over here. That's the only way I can really describe it. Survival is a state of being. Now, there are a million different ways to get yourself into a pickle where you're surviving. But in the context of camping and bushcraft and what we would call, you know, wilderness activities, I would say that there's two things that contribute to survival in a wilderness survival scenario. And that is being lost to where you do not know where you are anymore, and you're cut off from supplies, and you're cut off from other people, and you're cut off from knowing your location, and being stranded. Now, stranded is different because stranded, you know where you're at, but you can't do anything about getting out of there, and you're stuck with whatever you have. Being lost and being stranded are probably 95% of what wilderness survival would be. Now, you can be on the moon or you can be out at sea, but that's not a wilderness survival thing. So for our intents and purposes, we're talking about being lost and stranded in the wilderness for survival. Now, survival is a situation that you never plan, and it goes without saying that something has went wrong or you would not be in this state. Now, survival is always one thing. Survival is always unintentional. Nobody gets themselves in a predicament on purpose. If you're planning for it, it's probably not survival in the first place. It's a maybe you're just you go out into a remote section of wilderness with nothing. You're challenging yourself. You're challenging the skill set that you have, but it's not really survival. Survival is unplanned. Survival is accidental. And survival in a wilderness situation is being lost or stranded. There may be something else in there I'm missing, but that's 95% of it. So right here, I think this is the area that all of these things converge. With the essential bushcraft skills, I think these bushcraft skills, the essential ones, fire, water, shelter, I think these are also survival skills, and the two cannot really be separated. All this stuff over here, I would say this is not survival skills. Maybe something comes in useful. Chances are, you know, you're never going to need to know how to make a candle holder out of a diamond willow or any other thing that falls more into the craft end of bushcraft. This set of skills down here, the most basic, the most important of bushcraft skills, are also survival skills. This is fire, water, shelter. I would add navigation to that, but sometimes navigation can cause more problems than you started out with. Especially if, you know, you might be the best navigator in the world, but you may be traveling through country that's going to make things worse than had you just sat still and built a big fire and waited. So what is all the rest of this area that's over here in survival? Because this is definitely not camping, and survival being a state of things, it's definitely not a set of skills, and it's definitely not knowledge. This over here, I would say perseverance is over here, the will to live is over here, determination is over here. All these things that you can never practice, you can never be tested on until you wind up getting into a terrible situation that you have to get out of. If you're out for a long time, in a survival situation, you may add in primitive trapping and such things like that. But food is not going to be your main concern in a survival situation. Water is, shelter is, fire. You got to keep your body at the right temperature. Hypothermia is a big problem here, and water is a big problem here, and the elements are a big problem here. Food is out here, and as far as primitive trapping, I would put that farther out on the line of importance, going from the important things to stuff that's just kind of frivolity. Now, if you have these essential bushcraft skills mastered, I think you could turn a survival type situation into a camping situation, to where you're lost, you're stranded, but you have stabilized yourself with this set of skills, and now you're basically lost and stranded, but you're camping, you're riding things out. And that, I believe, is the difference between survival, bushcraft, and camping. Now, I hope that that explanation is of value to somebody. Going forward, I just want to make sure that the right context is established. I think the serious end of the scale down here, where survival and bushcraft intersects, I think that's where we're going to spend all of our time in this series, Radical Bushcraft, which I hope, my intent is that it's the most clear and simple version of what you need to know if you're going to spend lots of time out in the wilderness, that you're going to find here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching Bush Radical. My name is Dave Whipple. Be radical, eh? See you soon.